He pointed over. I was in a car at the time. I wasn't driving, but I was in a car. And he pointed over. There was two kids playing basketball about 50 feet away from where I was. And he was like, hey, I was in a little bit of a fog and I don't remember much, but I remember the words that this cop said to me that, you could have killed those two kids and you would have spent the rest of your life in prison. Like, how does that make you feel? And that stuck with me. It was like, this is it.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Yo, and welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. I am your host, Bryce III, and this is my co-host, Liz.
Hey, welcome back. Super excited to have you here, and also so excited to welcome our guest today. We're so lucky to have Chris Spallina here in the studio with us. Chris is a program manager on the East Coast who focuses on New Jersey and Philadelphia, as well as out-of-network volunteer-led sites in the region. Chris has been with the Phoenix for a while. He's a person in recovery, and we're just really excited to hear his story and just see where the conversation takes us. So welcome, Chris. We're so pumped that you're here. You want to just say a hello?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Thanks, Bryce. I'm definitely excited to be here. Not my first podcast, but this is one of the ones that I'm more excited about.
Awesome. Nice. And we're excited to have you. So a couple of things. So with the podcast, we like to dig into people's personal stories, whatever it is that they are excited about sharing, whatever it is that they are excited about in their recovery. So there's so many different aspects that we could touch on today when we got you on the show. So really, I want to start with your experience in the Phoenix and what has your experience working and doing the work that we do? What has that been like for you? And what do you do?
Wow, what do I do? Wow, that one's going to take a little bit longer, but I'll start with the other questions first. My experience with the Phoenix has been amazing. I guess you'll probably learn more about this later on when we dig into my actual story, but I started at the Phoenix as a volunteer. As a member first, and then as a volunteer. I am a person who is also criminal justice involved. So when I came to the Phoenix, I just got out of jail, then just got out of rehab. Was on probation and walked in the doors of what was Root to Rise, which is a nonprofit that we had here in New Jersey that partnered and became the Phoenix a little bit later on. And I feel like I found my home and I just never left. I went to every class that was offered. I stayed around and cleaned the floors, whatever was needed of me. I told everybody and anyone about like, hey, I got this cool thing that I'm doing. It's sober fitness and sober yoga, and it's all free. All you got to do is show up and be 48 hours sober. And then from there, I started as a part-time. I think my first title was Program Support Associate. I think that really my supervisor at the time made that title up just so that she could hire me. So it wasn't an actual title that existed. But I helped out with the scheduling and keeping our studio in New Jersey organized. And then right before the world flipped upside down with the pandemic in 2020. It was 2020, right?
Yeah.
They asked me if I'd like to be the program manager, and I said, absolutely. I oversee our programming, and my main focus is New Jersey, and then Philadelphia will be my second focus. I also help our New York City team out with some of their programming. So I oversee our programming and development of programming and our volunteer acquisition, engagement, training. And creating partnerships is a big one for me because I think there's so many great, at least in New Jersey, there's so many great other nonprofits and organizations that are doing such amazing work for the recovery community. But what the Phoenix does is so unique that we're kind of like a complement to any other organization that is doing recovery support services. So a big part of my initiative is to find out what other nonprofits are doing work that are aligned with our vision and have a community of people in recovery or sober people that would benefit from what we offer.
No, that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. And have you always been in this type of work? Like what what led you here? Let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your story and about your personal recovery and what recovery means to you.
So I'll skip the whole childhood thing. So I started using.
Don't go back that far.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go that far. But I'll start from my first experience with any sort of treatment. I was part of the wave of people that started experimenting with opiates and painkillers during the whole Sackler-induced epidemic of the early 2000s. So painkillers and other types of opiates. And when I was in college, it just became unsustainable financially, and that led me right to heroin. So I actually graduated college with a 3.0, using the whole time, not thinking I had a problem. And the first time I got arrested was right like a week after I graduated college. And the first time I went to treatment was a week after that. So when I first went to treatment, the treatment model or the recovery world was not as progressive or open to change or open to different ways as it is now. So what that looked like for me was I went to Florida. I went to a treatment center. I went to a detox for 2 weeks that my parents had to pay for. And then I went to a treatment center in Miami. And the whole treatment model for me was wake up in the morning, get on a van and go to 3 12-step meetings, and then come back to the treatment center, maybe eat lunch. If you got lucky, you might get to meet with your clinician. If not, then you would just get back on the bus, go to 3 more 12-step meetings, come back for dinner, and then go back out to another meeting. So here I am, 21 years old, being told, like, if you want to stay alive, this is what you have to do, and go to these meetings all day long every day. And I was like, no, I don't even think I'm an addict at the point. And mind you, this is also like August in Miami when you could still smoke cigarettes in these church basements. So it was like 95 degrees. And it just didn't seem like a life without a life of sobriety didn't look appetizing to me at the time. I didn't fully understand like what type of problem I really had. And I can remember somebody saying like, if you want what we have, this is what you have to do to get it. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this and I don't want what you have. And it was a bad choice at the time. I went back to New Jersey and I started doing the same thing I was doing before I left New Jersey. So,
of course.
Yeah. So at 21 years old, me still having a little bit of an ego and not agreeing that I was an addict, that I could handle on my own. I went home, and then throughout the years between 2005 and 2011, it was just in and out of treatment, in and out of jail, lots of trouble, disappointed my family, disappointed my friends. 2011, I got arrested in upstate New York at a music festival. If anyone's heard of the band Phish, I got arrested at Phish's big music festival in upstate New York. And
what year was that?
That was in 2011.
I think I was at a Phish show in upstate New York in 2011. Wouldn't it be wild if it was the same one?
So Watkins Glen at Super Bowl was like a 3-day music festival.
Maybe not. I think I was in... No, I don't think that's where I was. Oh, I was hoping for that.
Saratoga.
Weird little coincidence.
Yeah, it would have been
Might have been Saratoga. Yeah, because I was living in Albany at the time.
I was there too, so we might have been in the same. We might have been dancing next to each other and not even known it.
We probably were. Yeah. Oh, if only we knew what was to come.
Yeah. So in New York State, New Jersey historically has been super progressive with their drug laws. So for the most part, they have lots of treatment programs associated with the court system and lots of second chances. I mean, I was on probation 5 times between the time I was 18 and the time I was 30. And I never did any significant time in prison or just, some short jail stints. But in upstate New York, they were like, well, here's some drugs. You're going to prison. I'm like, wait, no, I'm going to call my lawyer. Here I am, like, still kind of with a little bit of an ego. Like, I'm going to just get a lawyer. I'm going to beat this case. I didn't do anything wrong. But so that went on for some time that I thought I was going to fight this case. That I was caught with a substantial amount of narcotics. There was no way I would have won any sort of trial with that. It was ridiculous for me to even think so. But the judge up there eventually offered me a deal. I could do 3 years in prison, or I could do in New York State. They have this program called shock incarceration, which is exactly what it sounds. I went to the county jail for a few weeks. I went to Elmira Penitentiary for a couple of months. And then when I got out, went to a drug treatment center that was Still basically a jail with barbed wire fences and corrections officers and all that, but it was modeled after military boot camp. So waking up at 4:30 in the morning, doing PT out on the blacktop, or they call it the grinder. I also was like, twice the size I am now, smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and not the picture of health. So it was just like a real shock to my system at the time. Running a couple of miles a day. But what I really learned there, I mean, I started that program with 60 people and 23 of us finished. Everybody else went back and finished out their full prison sentence because it was really intense. But a couple, and any way I looked at it, I said 6 months of anything is better than 3 years. So I was going to finish. There's no way you were getting me to not finish that program. I would have stood on my head for 6 months to not go to prison for 3 years. But after some time there, I started getting in shape. I started enjoying the physical fitness aspect of it. I learned a lot about myself, of like the organization and discipline that was being instilled on us by these drill instructors was something that I definitely did not have in my life before. Like making my bed in the morning, what? No, I never did that. Right? Ironing my clothes, never did that before. So like after some time, it was less intimidating and more like, well, maybe I can do this. I had a little bit more of an optimistic view about what life could look like without substance use. And once I left there, I stayed sober for almost a year just by going to the gym, running in all these 5Ks and obstacle races and doing CrossFit. That's when I first got introduced to CrossFit in 2013. But what ended up happening was I got off parole. I think it's important to note too, like my probation officer at the time, this is not funny, but I can laugh at it now. She told me I was the first person that she ever had that was on probation in 3 different counties and parole in 2 different states. So it was like some sort of a record for Mon County probation. I don't know.
All right, we got a record set.
Yeah, record. I didn't get a championship belt or anything for it. I promise that. But
put it on the resume.
Yeah, after I got off parole, I was still doing all those healthy things, but I was still doing those things, hanging out with people that weren't living a sober lifestyle, and it slowly started going back to running a 5K and having a drink afterwards. And we all know how that leads. I don't have to dig too much deeper into it. And then so between about 2015 and 2018, I started using full time again. And something new started happening. I started overdosing. This is when the fentanyl crisis kind of really began. So between 2015 and 2018, I had 3 more arrests, criminal charges, and maybe 5 overdoses that were all near fatal, where Narcan was involved, CPR, all that. And then the last time I used was May 24th of 2018. I had an overdose. Narcan, resuscitation, CPR, the whole thing. And when I woke up, when the cop was giving me CPR, he pointed over. I was in a car at the time. I wasn't driving, but I was in a car. And he pointed over. There was 2 kids playing basketball about 50 feet away from where I was. And he was like, hey, I was in a little bit of a fog and I don't remember much, but I remember the words that this cop said to me that, you could have killed those 2 kids and you would have spent the rest of your life in prison. Like, how does that make you feel? And that stuck with me. It was like, this is it. This is it. I knew I'd been in prison already. I didn't want to go back there. I didn't really care too much about myself at the time, but I sure didn't want to hurt anybody else, especially children. So I went to the county jail for a couple of months, and the judge in my case made a deal with my attorney and my family and my girlfriend. If they would find a treatment center that would accept me, that he would release me. Otherwise, I was going to stay there. So I did. I left that treatment center. I left that county jail in handcuffs in the sheriff's van with a full beard, and I was a mess, still in the clothes that I got arrested in. And I went to a treatment center. When I got to that treatment center, I sat on the couch with this clinician, a young woman. Her name's Ashley, who to this day is a friend of mine, and told her everything that I just told you. Like, this is what I have tried. This is what didn't work for me. This is what worked for me. I feel like there's something missing in my life. She introduced me to yoga and meditation, and at first, I laughed in her face at first. She'll tell you this if you ever have a chance to ask her. I was like, yeah, right. I'll go to Lululemon, and I'll get my Lululemon tights, and I'm gonna do yoga. And she's like, no, just try it. You said you were willing to try anything, just try this. And I did, and I tried yoga and meditation every day for a couple of weeks, and instantly I just took to it. I was like, this is it. This is gonna be part of my recovery. I know it. all of like anxiety and like a common theme of my stories that I would get clean or sober for a short amount of time, and all those things come up, like credit card debt and legal problems, and then like the guilt and shame and embarrassment, and who did I piss off when I was using, and I would use again just to not have to think or feel all those things, and then just compound my problems. So when I started getting into the meditation and yoga, it kind of really helped with that, regulating those type of emotions. It made me, I had that flash again of like optimism about what life could look like without using. Right. And then cue the Phoenix. While I was there, somebody came in who also works for the Phoenix now. Amy is her name. She came into the treatment center where I was to teach a yoga class for what was Root to Rise, but is now the Phoenix, and asked me, what are you going to do when you leave here? And I didn't have an answer. I was like, well, I don't know. I'm going to do yoga, but I don't know what else I'm going to do. I left out one part. Well, I'll get to that. And so that's what I did when I left. I went to the Phoenix, went to my first yoga class, and I just never left. So Bryce, you asked me what I did before that. A part I left out before I got into this line of work, and it's an important part, is I was a union carpenter in New York City. So when I graduated college, I told you I went to my first treatment center. When I came home, my father was basically like, look, you either get a job or you got to go find somewhere else to live. And he was in a union. So he said, come work with me. And I did that. And it wasn't a healthy environment for me. It wasn't something that I felt that was morally rewarding to me. It wasn't something I was excited about. So when I finally got sober this time and I had to make all those major changes in my life, that was one of them. It was like, I'm going to take this leap of faith and like, back away from the financial stability of my union job, and everything's going to fall into place. I'm sure it will. Everything's going to fall into place. So when I started at the Phoenix, I had no income. I was just kind of running on fumes from my pension and all the stuff that came from the union. And that's when I became a volunteer. And luckily it all worked out. And now I have been able to make a career with the Phoenix, share what I've learned for myself with everybody else.
When you left your carpentry job, like were you already doing like yoga and meditation at that point?
No. So when I had that last that date of May 24, 2018, I was still working with the union. I could have, when I got out of, I was in jail for 2 months. I was in treatment for about 2 months. I could have went right back to that job. But I made the choice that I couldn't, because a couple of different reasons. First of all, it wasn't something I could see myself doing for the next 30 years of my life and be happy about it. I found no joy in it. I had to commute to and from New Jersey to New York City, which anybody who's familiar with New Jersey Transit, between those years, it became a real mess. So at least once a week, it was taking me 3 or 4 hours to get to work. And this is not to disparage the New York City Carpenters Union, but not everybody is living a sober lifestyle on construction jobs in New York City. So it was just not, I wasn't willing to go back and put myself in any situation that might have been a risk to my sobriety at that time.
No, I mean, the reason I ask is because of the relationship that that those who tend to have faith and let go of something that's promised while leaning into something that is not necessarily guaranteed, but we feel may be good for our spirit. The people that I've seen that will do that usually have some type of practice, like some type of yoga, some type of meditation, or something that allows for them to dig into those emotions of fear, those emotions of insecurity, those emotions of doubt, and still do what it is that helps us to create the life we desire anyway.
Yeah, very much so. So I will definitely agree with you on that and the meditation. And I got really into, because of the meditation and because of yoga, I got really into studying yogic philosophy and Buddhism. And that's where I derive a lot of my spirituality from. And there's one parable. I'm not going to read the parable or get into it, but it's a story about a cat, an ox, and the ox's tail. Like on one side of the fence there's like where there's going to be a butcher shop, like the cow's going to be slaughtered. And then on the other side of the fence, there's a hill, and he doesn't know what's on the other side. And he can never get his tail all the way past the fence because of fear, right? And the Kohen goes on to tell, sometimes we have to get past that fence to see what's on the other side, even if we're fearful of it. And that's where I was at in that. It was like, I know if I go back there it's not going to work out well for me. And I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I'm going to just jump in and say, like, this is what makes me happy. This is what I find rewarding. And this is the path I have to follow. And I agree with you 1,000% that spirituality played a huge part in that decision.
Yeah. I've often looked at my recovery, and especially when I first came into recovery myself, as one of those things where it's like, I don't know what's through this door, but I could tell you what's back there, and that was not sustainable. Like I felt like a shell of a man. It's not working. So I often say, and I'm 12 step. I came in, and initially I came into 12 step Alcoholics Anonymous, and when I came in, I often say that they could have gave me like a box of spiders and said, this is what we eat to not do these things that you say that you're struggling with. And I would have like, look, give me a bowl, because I'm about to eat these spiders. Because it's like, whatever, I was so open. I had been beat to a point of desperation. It's like, okay, like whatever you got for me, I'm open for it. And so you mentioned before we got on this call that you also have delved into different things besides meditation and yoga, including music, climbing. And then you did mention a bit when you was in that boot camp, how you got into like the active lifestyle and like, the activity that would be considered something similar to CrossFit. So what are some of the things that you're interested in now? Like, what are some of the things that are part of your recovery or part of your holistic wellness now? How do you keep up yourself?
Yeah, well, I still have a very dedicated daily meditation practice. Actually, I know that not everybody's gonna be able to see it, but there's my little meditation corner right there.
Hey.
So I have a dedicated daily meditation practice. I still read a lot and journal a lot, but as far as physical activity, CrossFit, I do CrossFit probably more days a week than I should. Climbing is a big one for me. Mountain biking. Music, all different types of music. You know what I kind of, Bryce, you brought up a good point too, is all those years that I was using, and tell me if you relate with this or not, like I knew I was uncomfortable, right? But it almost was like being comfortable with being uncomfortable because I was so scared of what it would be without, right? Like I get so comfortable in being uncomfortable. Like I feel like that's the only thing I deserve, and I'm just going to stay like this rather than taking the steps to be like, this might be better. And now that I have this, like we live this kind of like adventurous lifestyle where I'm comfortable, but like I'm very willing to step out of my comfort zone and try something new because of all these great experiences. I can tell you, 5 years ago, I would have never stepped on a yoga mat. Like I told you, I laughed in Ashley's face when she told me about it. Climbing a mountain, you're bugging if you thought I was ever going to climb a mountain. But now, like, I see all these things have been so positive on my life, and I see how others enjoy them, and now I'm willing to try anything. I want to be out in nature. I want to be having fun. I want to be moving and using my body in ways that I didn't think I was able to before.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge in my life, and I feel like I'm a way more open-minded. Just because, thinking about just how my life switched, like how I had the willingness, and so now even with things, so I got this thing called the olive test, and like I hate olives; they're disgusting. And but
I'll eat your olives.
But every time I come across an olive, like I'll try it again just to make sure I don't like it still. And most times I do not like it. There's some olives that are less nastier than the nastiest olives, but I'm still to a point where it's like I'm not about to eat a bowl of olives for breakfast. But it's just that thing where it's like, why did I arrive at this point where I'm afraid of heights, or I don't like this, or I don't like that, and we tend to just say that and that be a declaration, and then we just stick with it. And it's like, well, why? Recovery has been a big motivation to ask why in my life. And so it's like, you want to go climb a mountain? If my first thought is no, then it's like, why is it no? And then maybe, yeah, why not? You want to go ride a bike? Like, yeah, of course. You want to go out in nature? Yeah, let's do that. You want to CrossFit? Maybe. Yeah, sure. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you where it's like, if you could put 2 words as the description of my recovery, it'd be what's next.
What's next? I love that. And I'll get you, Bryce, I'll get you out here to Jersey one day, and we'll go to Brooklyn, and we'll go to a fancy Italian deli, and we'll find you some olives that you like.
Okay, all right. That's a challenge that I can get with.
See, what's next?
And then you send me the ones that you don't like, because I've never met an olive that I've not enjoed.
So that'll be all of them probably. But
there we go.
He said, "What's next? What's next is we're gonna find the olives that you think are banging."
Oh man,
Chris, I gotta tell you, I relate so much to that, like your 21-year-old self that went to that meeting and had people saying, you know, like, if you want what we have, this is what you have to do. Because I sat in a lot of rooms, a lot of meetings, a lot of basements, and saw, you know, people smoking and drinking a lot of coffee. And I felt the same way. Like, I don't want what you have. Like, if my options are, you know, drinking myself to death, and at least I know how to turn off the pain, you know, even if it causes more pain in the long run, like I know how to turn it off in the short term, or this forever and ever, amen. Like, I'll take the road that I've traveled, that I know, as painful and awful as it is, like this seems worse to me. So for me, it wasn't until I found the yoga mat too, and I had those glimpses of like, oh, there is something on the other side that I want. Like, I had to, like, intellectually even, and I, you know, it's really a spiritual knowing, but like for me, something had to click in my brain to be like, oh, there is something on the other side that I want. Because I was not convinced for years and years. I was like, I'm just going to keep turning back to this bottle until I have just a glimmer of light that like the other side is going to be better. Because even quitting drinking, even like getting rid of this pain that I know, still seems more painful than the pain that I know. Because at least then I had an off switch, you know, and I had like a solution to what I thought was the problem, or what I thought was a solution to what I thought was a problem. So I think that moment of like that light coming in, and honestly, I think for you, and I think for a lot of people, like having those little moments of sobriety that are kind of forced on you, whether it's from incarceration or anything else, that's when you're able to get that little gift of a glimmer of light, and then realize that you really do want that other thing. Because there's got to be that want. It can't just be because somebody said so.
Right. And I think that's one of the things that's so magical about the Phoenix, because you know how we always say there's no one right way to recover whatever it is that you're doing to stay healthy. Keep doing it. Join us in addition. But what I found, like, I'm really good at being miserable, especially while I was using. Like, I know how to be miserable, right? And like, I don't need to do all the work that I had to do to get myself sober and stay sober and healthy, and end up still miserable on the other side. There's no reason for me to be sober and miserable. If I'm going to be miserable, I'll just go back to being miserable the way I know how to be miserable. It's way easier that way. But that's the magic of the Phoenix, is like, whatever it is that you're doing, like 12-step is a part of my story. Therapy is a part of my story. Medication-assisted recovery was part of my story at one point. But like, the thing for me was the life on the other side had to be fun and enjoyable, and I had to have something to look forward to. So when I could say I'm going to go to a sober music festival in Detroit, or I'm going to go to CrossFit with a bunch of people, or I'm going to climb a mountain, I'm going to go see a place I've never saw before. Like, those are all things I would have never done while I was using, and that's what keeps the magic. That keeps the spark there for me. There's joy out there, and I can go and seek it. Like, I don't need to like do things I don't want to do anymore, or they're gonna make me unhappy. There's so many things out there. You
couldn't have done those joyful things. It's not even like, oh, I wouldn't have chosen. It's like they were close to you. Those doors were locked, and you unlocked them when you walked through that door to recovery, and that's so amazing. I think one of your many superpowers too is that you have like traveled a lot of those different pathways of recovery, and you've gone down. You've had a lot of different kinds of like bottoms, and so you can relate to people in a million different ways. And then because of your experiences too, and just because of the person that you are, I think you look at people with so much openness and just acceptance, and it makes people feel really safe to share their story. So when people see you, and you are a person now that says like, you know, if you want this, if you want like even a part of what I've got, like, you know, just here, try out a Phoenix class, or try out a meditation, or, you know, like offering things just like so openly. People are like, I really want what that guy has.
Right.
And that's, I mean, even just coming on this podcast, like that's just showing people that glimmer of light. So it's amazing.
Right.
So thank you.
I think that's something, actually, Todd Jones, one of the other employees here, said something to me one day that stuck with me when I first met him years ago. He's like, I wear a sober shirt 200 days a year now, and I'm proud of it. And that's part of it. You know, like, I'm proud to go out there and tell people like, this is where I've been through and this is what I did and this is where I'm now. And you can do this too if you want to. You know, we're here for you.
Yeah. That's absolutely magnificent, man. One question I do have for you, when you talk about going out and doing these things and what's next and what can I do next, when you climb a mountain, usually when you get on the other side of that, another benefit or another side effect of that is that you've changed. You're transformed. You're not the same as when you were at the bottom of that mountain, and you do an activity and you begin to get good at it, or you begin to find the things that speak to your spirit, and then you start to begin to practice. And then as you develop and cultivate your practice, now you've changed. And what I've learned in my own personal recovery and the people who have shared their stories with us, there is a transformation that takes place. And I kind of just wanted to pick your brain on how do you feel that your experience in recovery has changed you from where you came from to where it is that you are now?
Great question. Well, on a simple level, I can tell you, because of that regimen we spoke of earlier, like how I have a dedicated practice in the morning. Something that's different now than was 4 years ago is I wake up every morning at the same exact time. Literally 5 minutes before Alexa goes off and says, hey, it's time to wake up, I'm up every day. And I wake up and I go outside and I have a smile on my face. I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to hear the birds chirping. I'm not always so happy when there's snow on the floor, but I'll get used to that. But that's one thing. I start the day off with gratitude and joy. And that has never been a part of my journey until I was able to get sober and find things. And one of the things that makes me the most happy is what we just talked about, being able to share what has been so healing for me with other people. So if we can save lives or change lives and bring joy back to people's lives, like what other reason is there for us to be on this planet and help others, you know?
Right.
And I mean, I'm indifferent in so many ways, but the most important way, I think, is that my goal is to be of service to others. You know, like people lent a hand to me when I needed a hand, and like for me to be able to repay that in any way is the goal of my day. Like who can I help today in whatever way.
Would you change anything about your story? That's
an interesting question too, because I said this and I'm going to say it to you. Somebody asked me this once and they were like, oh my God, are you serious? I wouldn't. Because every single one of them, I mean, I don't know if that whole like butterfly effect thing is real or if anybody thinks about it, but like if one of those things changed, if say I didn't go to that Fish concert and I didn't get arrested and I didn't go to prison, would I have the same life? Maybe I'd be sober. Maybe I would not be alive. Maybe I'd still be on a high rise in New York City, banging nails into sheetrock. I don't know. But if any one of those little things changed, I wouldn't be exactly where I am today, here talking to you about this amazing journey and hoping to inspire others to come along with me. So no, there's nothing I would change.
I feel like that's such a through line for so many people that I've, personally talked to. And I mean, recovery people are my very favorite people in the whole wide world to talk to. And I feel like so many of us feel that way, like this if you've ever gone to a 12-step meeting, you've probably heard people say, I'm a grateful alcoholic or whatever they identify themselves as. And I remember thinking early on, like, shut up, and now it's like, I so get that. Like I have this like deep, like unending well of gratitude for every experience, even the most painful ones. Cause it's just, there's so many that I would never ever trade. And you don't get the good if you don't have the hard.
Yeah.
Right. And
I'm with you.
We learn something, we learn something from all those experiences. And like Bryce said, when we get to the other side of the mountain, we're a different person. But like, I really like where I'm at today. I really like the mission that we're on. I really like the community that surrounds me. Like I wouldn't want to risk anything. Maybe like something small was different. I went to a different college. Maybe everything would be totally different. Maybe I'd be living a great life, but I wouldn't be living this life. And this is the life I want right now.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing, man. That's a beautiful thing that you're living a life that you're proud of. And we're proud to be able to know you and to be able to have you on the podcast. And we're honored that you came to share your story. And we're also excited about the fact that there isn't, to our knowledge, time travel, so we can't go back and step on a butterfly.
No choice anyway. Yeah.
They talk about the unchangeable past and the unpredictable future, and the most important part is to just be here now and just enjoy this.
Chris, I feel like I would be remiss not to ask you, can you go into a little detail about your morning practice meditation? Because I feel like we talk a lot about that, about mindfulness practices. And I know Bryce has a really beautiful one. And I love my yoga practice, but I don't know how much we've gone into detail about what that practice looks like. And since it's such an important part of your recovery, you want to give a little detail
for
somebody who's looking to start? It's
also interesting that Be Here Now is what we're talking about, because if anybody's familiar with Ram Dass, one of my favorite.
Spiritual father of mine.
Yeah, one of my favorite. So when I first started meditation, and if I were to give someone a starting point, guided meditation is always a great place to start. And I still use guided meditation at some point. Through my studies, my meditation practice has taken a little bit more, and through some of the teachers that I've worked with, has taken more of a path towards Buddhism. And there's also many schools of Buddhism. The one that I follow mostly is Zazen Buddhism, which Zazen meditation is really exactly what it translates to, is silent sitting. So like I sit in silence for a certain amount of time every day. And there's also some breath work and breathing that goes along with that. But for my personal practice, it's silent sitting. Sometimes there's mantra meditation that goes along with that, but for the most part, my daily practice is silent. And it's changed a little bit for me because, and this is due to some of the teachers I've worked with, and I used to set a timer for 20 minutes and be like, all right, I'm going to sit for 20 minutes today. But like what ended up happening is like some of those days you wake up and you really just don't want to do it. Am I right, Bryce? Some of the days you're like, I just don't want to do this today. So like I'd set that timer for 20 minutes. I'd sit in, half lotus or whatever I'm going to sit in. And then come like 15 or 16 minutes, I'm like peeking at the timer to see how much time is left and stuff. Realizing I had this like attachment that like if I didn't meditate for 20 minutes that I wasn't doing it right, or I was going to fail for the day. So now there's no timer involved. So now I sit for as long as I sit for. Some days that's 7 or 8 minutes. I don't even know because I don't look at a clock. Some days it's a half an hour. I don't know. But it's the point of keeping the commitment to the practice for me is that I'm going to do it every day. And whatever it is that day is what it was meant to be. So if I sit one day and 1,000 different things go through my mind, that's great. I just learned something new about 1,000 different things. And then some days I sit and I'm able to just like not think for 20 minutes. And that's amazing too. But the point of it is there's no wrong way to do it. Just the commitment to the practice, I think, is what's most important. But if I were to suggest a starting point, and not a shameless plug for our live streaming meditations, but guided meditations in a community, there's something special about meditating with a community. Just the energy that it provides kind of takes away from that, like, I don't want to do this today thing, or maybe this isn't for me. Just being able to do that and share energy with others is really important. And I still make it a point to meditate in groups as often as I possibly can. But I think, yes, number one rule, if meditation is something that you're seeking for your own recovery journey, your own spirituality, is something, dedicate yourself to it. If that's for you, 5 minutes, 3 days a week, then try it for 5 minutes, 3 days a week and make sure you do it. That's all.
Yeah, shameless plug. Bryce III runs Conversations in Mindfulness at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mondays. And that's really been my first foray into having a group. And we've had some transformational sessions where like we start with a guided meditation, and after that we open the floor for conversation. And it's just one of those things that, because when I first started, like Chris said, the guided meditations is what really like got me going. And I use this app called Insight Timer. It's a free app with all type of guided meditations. And I just showed up on a daily basis and, just learned more as I went. But now being able to have access to these free communities where we can tap in with 6 or 7 or 8 other people, or up to 15, 20 other people who are trying to cultivate a practice just as well as we are. That's, man, ain't nothing like connectivity, ain't nothing like community. So it's a beautiful thing.
And Bryce, I think what you said is important too about that opening the discussion around it. Because what I have found, and I think you relate, I would love to know if you relate, is meditation practice is one thing. That's the basis. That's the foundation of our mindfulness work. But the idea is to take what we've learned off of the mat into our lives. So for me, it's like, can I have somebody cut me off on the Garden State Parkway and remember to focus on my breath for a few breaths before I do something that's not kind. You know? So having the capacity to sit with some other people to share what's came up or what's bothering you or what frustrations you're having or whatever it is, I think is really important. And finding someone who can be a guide for you, like Bryce, amazing guide, teacher, someone that's been there before you that can kind of share their own experience or at least listen.
I wholeheartedly agree. And since we've mentioned Ram Dass, and it's not a direct quote, but somewhere he has said, "My life is my practice." You know, my life is my practice. And it's for me, I've learned, the moments where I'm in the crib and I'm sitting by myself and kind of fine tuning my awareness is the brushing my teeth of my spirit, right? Like I got to show up and brush my teeth. I got to make my bed. I got to do these things to make sure I'm spiritually well. But when I go out there and then I run into people, and the compassion and understanding that I'm able to have for people is a practice as well. And being able to have that stop and pause moment between how I feel, if that feeling is offense, if that feeling is repulsion, if that feeling is something undesirable to us, and how I desire to show up, which is in compassion and in understanding and in love. And that's a big contribution. That's meditation, mindfulness is a big contribution to being able to show up in that manner. So I definitely wholeheartedly agree.
Right. And on that too, if you're familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, who also just passed on, he talked a lot about using mindfulness while he's washing the dishes, right? So like the mindfulness it's not this mystical thing that we have to go be sitting on a mountain to chanting to channel mindfulness. Like if we're practicing mindfulness while we're washing the dishes and all we're doing is washing the dishes, we're gonna do a really good job washing those dishes. If we're practicing mindfulness while we're in the gym, we're gonna perform better than we would if we were worrying about who's texting or calling us or what we're going to eat for dinner later. Mindfulness is a present time awareness thing. I mean, it just makes everything, when we have that singular point of focus and bring a full awareness to what we're doing, it just really makes us kind of like be able to do all of those things better and enjoy them and be in the moment. We're always so caught up, or I don't want to say I was always so caught up about like things that happened in the past that I'm depressed about or upset about or ashamed about, or things that may or may not happen in the future that I'm anxious or nervous about. But what's happening right now, none of that's happening right now. I can't change what's going to happen. I can't change what did happen. But right now, if I'm present in the moment, I can make the absolute best of it if I'm focused on what is actually happening in this moment.
Chris, thank you so much for being here. This has been really fun just to hear more of your story. And it's just always fun to spend time with you. I've said this when we've interviewed other folks from the Phoenix, that we get to work together, but to like talk on a personal level and not only hear each other's stories, but, be able to ask questions and just go a little deeper is really just such a gift. So grateful that you came here today, and definitely would highly recommend checking out those live stream meditations on the Phoenix channel. Download the Phoenix app. If you have any questions for us, please be sure to reach out. We're going to have a Phoenix podcast group in the app where you can drop in your questions, rate and review the podcast so that more people can find us. And what I miss, Bryce?
That is about it. You said the app. What app are you speaking of, Liz?
The Phoenix app. You can go to your app store and download it. If you look for the Phoenix, you can look up Sober Community as well, but the Phoenix should pop up for you. And you can sign up for classes, you can join groups, you can connect with individuals one-on-one, and there's a lot of new features coming out in the near future. So
yeah, let me tell you, that app is pretty sweet. It's really a one-stop shop for community and groups and all around the country. And if you are a veteran Phoenix team member, the cumbersome aspect of going online and then signing up and then getting the link from your email. But the app simplifies all of that, and you just click in the app and you're registered and you're good to go. So definitely grab that app. It'll be cool to have on your phone.
Bryce, I heard there's some really good on-demand meditations on that app too, with some spectacular instructors. Is that true? Is that true?
What spectacular instructors could that be? Oh yeah, it's Chris Spallina. Definitely. Good shout out. Yeah, hop in there. So you don't even have to show up at a certain time or certain place. You can just take a listen to Chris and a few of our other instructors and join for a meditation on your time.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody for tuning in to this episode of Rise, Recover, Live the podcast, and we will catch you next time.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.